right now. Okay, and that's the recording in progress note. And now I am moving us forward. As always, if you have any comments you'd like to share, speak up or use the chat. An introduction to our project team for those who may be watching online later on and don't know who all is involved. Project is led by CDG, working for the city of Chaska directly with WSB providing assistance. Today, a few interesting items to talk about, a little bit of a report on the engagement activities we completed over the last 2 weeks. And first of all, I want to say thank you very much to Mary and to Marshall for setting those up and helping to staff them. And I think it was a great big effort to coordinate that. And I think we have some good results to share as well. Then to chat a little bit about implementation as we are now in probably the final third of the plan development process where we're beginning to review items and thinking about recommendations we want to implement. And MnDOT announced an opportunity just last week for funding for programs and infrastructure. So we'll chat a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about just a quick overview of some thoughts and potential links and things to keep in mind as we're talking about the recommendations for the city's network. So to start with the first item about community engagement, again, to review for those who may be seeing this material for the first time, we've had a very successful set of engagement activities for the plan, more than 1,000 participants in the online survey and the Wikimap. But we noticed as well, because of the kind of assessment that we were doing through the process, that we weren't reaching everybody equally that lives in Chaska. And so we decided to embark on a campaign of listening sessions, which means going to the places that where people live or work, and we decided as part of a steering in a set of deliberations with the steering committee to try to go after these top three, to set up these top three sessions. For various reasons, it wasn't necessarily possible to set those up because of timing and other commitments. But we were able to, and Mary, with her very persistent work, was able to set up 2 listening sessions that took place on October 6th and October 13th. The first one on October 6th was at Lake Grace Apartments. We had about 20 people, different ethnic groups, cultural groups, nationalities, different ages available there, and had a translation into Somali and then also into Spanish. Though I think that wasn't especially needed. The Spanish translation was not especially needed, but the Somali translation was, and so we were grateful to have the services of Ahmed, who I think works for the school system and helped to translate. And we also had other participants, of course, who didn't need translation. So we reached all populations. We heard a lot of different things.
Whose bald head was that, man?
Must be a handsome fellow, that's all I know.
I don't get to look at the back of myself too often, so not good. Oh
goodness! Well, it's good to have you in the photograph there, Marshall, because I mean that's the project talking to the people. So that's very good. Thank you. What did we hear? We had some comments about lighting along the Lake Grace Trail for people wanting to quick trip. Several comments about lighting as well, but also a lot of acknowledgement of the great assets, the investments that have been made, what exists today already. There are many great trails in the area. Issues regarding traffic safety, about crossing Highway 41, for example. Also concerns about traffic on 41 in general. And then ideas for talking to other members of the community. There was a gentleman who drove school bus, and he said, talk to school bus drivers. They're going to know where walking and biking, where they work, where there's some potential safety issues, blind corners, etc. In addition, we also got a good lead on potential next engagement with young people. There was one of the gentlemen who was the former driver, or I think active bus driver, is also a Scouts master. So he suggested that we talk to their troops. The second event on October 13th was in Riverview Terrace, and this event was less well attended. We had one person from the area attend, and there was a lot of work to coordinate and to publicize, but still sometimes, there's no guarantee that people will come to the meeting. And so we had one lady who was there, and she had actually some very helpful suggestions for how some crossings that she saw children and young people from Riverview Terrace making after school in a kind of in a dangerous situation, in a dangerous setting. So that's good information for the plan as well. And just to give you a taste of the kind of activities that we had. For example, this is in Riverview Terrace, we printed a zoomed in map, and had people suggest to us locations where there are problems or issues. And it's the same thing that we did at Lake Grace. We also had these other materials where we're asking people how they feel walking or bicycling in a specific location, and to place a dot on the board related to where how that feels to them. This is a map of the city, of course, and you can see the two locations where we had listening sessions. Lake Grace, right in the middle of the city, with a lot of development nearby, houses, commercial development, a pretty well-developed sidewalk and trail network. And Riverview Terrace, more to the edge of the city, less close to a lot of those conveniences for daily life, but still within some reasonable distance of the downtown and the city's trail network. So different experiences as well for the people living in those areas. So with that, I'll take a quick little break, and I'll just ask if you have any questions or comments related to engagement. Did anything come up for you? Or and I would say that in general, our next activities, we had thought we'd have 3 listening sessions, and that one of them would be with young people. And so, I'll be connecting with Mary and Marshall next week, and we'll be chatting about that next opportunity. And potentially, I know that Mary has been trying to follow up with the mountain bike group of young people, but it's been difficult to coordinate something. And this gentleman at our Lake Grace session suggested that if we can actually meet with the Boy Scout troop, which I think would be very good as well. So that I think is a really good possibility. And he left his contact with Mary. So we have a way to contact him and set that up. Any thoughts, questions, comments related to engagement? Okay, not hearing any. I will move us back into the next portion of our conversation, which is to chat for a quick minute or two about safe routes to school. And the reason for bringing this up now is that this is really a wonderful opportunity for funding some of the improvements, not only that we may identify in terms of trails, but also in terms of programs, and maybe especially so in terms of programs. That's an opportunity because in a lot of ways, as I've been looking at the work that your city has done and is doing, there is a lot of there is a big opening to actually expand your programming quite a bit, and I'll go into a little bit, tiny bit more more detail. So this is just from the MnDOT's webpage. I sent a link to this page to everyone for funding opportunities for in the city's Safe Routes to School work. And I want to just highlight here, this is the non-infrastructure. This is the program's implementation, which is education, encouragement, enforcement, evaluation, equity. No local match is required. Basically free money that DOT, I mean, we all pay into the pool, of course, because it's taxes, but there won't be any additional local match required. There is an information session tomorrow at 10 a.m., as you see here in the screen, and another one on Monday, November 1st. I think it would be important to have, at least one person from our group join. I know that I will. I think I'll be able to join tomorrow, but still, somebody maybe from the city might also would like to join, just to make sure that that information goes directly to the city as well. So Safe Routes to School, what is that and why is that important? It seems to me, and Marshall and I have had conversation about this before, there is really no Safe Routes to School planning that has happened in the city of Chaska. At least I haven't been able to find any report from it. And I know when I asked Marshall, he wasn't aware of Safe Routes to School planning work. The only thing that I have found is a report that was developed as part of an architecture class at the University of Minnesota about 5 years ago. So and this is the cover of that. And it's, it's wonderful. It's wonderful work. It's wonderful student work. But it actually, there's a lot of room to go into additional detail and to have a more robust plan for the city. And so one of the things that I want to just quickly highlight with you, first of all, so we're working on this pedestrian and bicycle plan, and there may be a way to present our recommendations as kind of in fulfillment of a Safe Routes to School plan. A Safe Routes to School plan is a very specific kind of plan, but it shares a lot of characteristics with this work that we're doing with you now, which is that it's a 6 E's oriented plan with a lot of, and programming is a very key part of it. So in some ways it's a bigger part of it because that's how you build the use of the new infrastructure that you may develop. You have a lot of schools and educational related centers in the city of Chaska. It's a huge opportunity for the city to think about developing a Safe Routes to School plan to cover these, because it will include infrastructure, which is part of what we're working on. And it also will include programming, which is also part of what we're working on. I'm going to give you an example. This is a recent plan that we completed for the city of Oak Creek in Wisconsin. We've also done a lot of Safe Routes to School plans here in Minnesota, working for DOT actually, and for communities directly. But I chose this example because I thought, it's kind of very compact. We've been making effort to make our Safe Routes to School plans more and more compact to ensure that people are aware of them and that they get implemented. And so generally what you're going to see in a Safe Routes to School plan is you want a documentation of what exists in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of programming. And that's something that when we've been doing the documentation, and I don't know if you recall that I've asked before, what do you know about measurement? What do you know about enforcement programs? We had that conversation about 2 months ago. That was part of that information gathering for our program's recommendation. There's not a lot, in like evaluation and measurement. There's hardly anything that's going on in Chaska today. There were others where there's also a lot of opportunity, and I think that the schools themselves don't have a 6 E's plan for walking and biking. So anyway, the first step is documenting what exists in terms of infrastructure and programming, and then what the plan does, it, within a half a mile or a quarter mile, then we come up with recommendations that are both infrastructure and programming. So, this is for this school here in Oak Creek. We have, you can see, infrastructure recommendations identified for specific intersections. You see sidewalks, you see it in the blue right there, sidewalk E, sidewalk F, G, H, and then you see programming efforts towards the bottom of the screen. And then it's a very compact plan, but it really helps to identify what are those opportunities that we're going to move on. And then there's a little bit of description about, so what are those programming recommendations? What are those infrastructure recommendations? I mentioned to you that I worked on a number of safe routes to school plans for the Department of Transportation in Minnesota. Probably over 100 if you were to add them all together. And of course, they've been, over a period of maybe 6 years in different solicitations and as part of a larger team as well. But probably over 100. And this set actually that I'm showing you from Wisconsin, that was nine schools at a time in that specific contract for the city of Oak Creek. The way that MnDOT evaluates grant requests, so a lot of times, when a city or a school district says, I need a sidewalk, I'm going to apply for MnDOT to give me money. MnDOT's going to do two things. First, they're going to ask you, do you have a safe routes to school plan in place? Have you done it already, and is it adopted? If you don't, you're much less likely to get funding. And the second thing is, depending on what kind of funding you're asking for, if you're asking for infrastructure and you have not implemented any programming in the school previously, if you don't have an evaluation system set up in the school, if you don't have a walking school bus, if you don't have bike to work day, they're going to say, this school or this area does not have, has not developed a local culture about encouraging children to walk or bike. And so we are not going to fund that infrastructure because it won't get used necessarily. And we can spend that infrastructure money, which is a lot more. Typically, it's much more expensive than a program. We'll put that money at a district or with a school that already has built up, 5%, 10% of their kids walking or biking to school, because we know that that infrastructure will get a lot of use. And so it's really critical, when trying to request funding from MnDOT, to start with programming and to get the programming, to strengthen it and to work with the school systems to keep making that stronger. And then that puts you in a great position for infrastructure funding. Any questions or comments about that? I'm going to stop sharing and I'm just make sure we have a chance to chat. Safe routes to school funding. It's a great opportunity. It doesn't appear to me that Chaska has very much in place, or even any safe routes to school planning in place. Is that true? Would that be accurate?
I'd say that's correct. I work for the school district through community ed, and we aren't doing anything district-wide that I know of. If schools are doing it, they may be doing it on an individual basis. I know here 3 years ago, when school times changed, they also changed, I think, the walk radius for quite a few of our elementary buildings. So that has potentially increased the amount of kids that are now either forced to walk or parents are forced to do drop-off pickup. I know you go through any of our schools, middle school, high school, elementary, the parent drop-off pickup line is crazy. You don't want to be caught there right after school if you don't have to be.
Yep. I believe it. So it's a great opportunity, I think, because in a way, we're starting from very close to zero, right? at a district-wide level. And so we can really make improvement. And, our goal, and it would be the same for a safe route to school plan as it is for the pedestrian and bicycle plan, is to get more people walking and bicycling. And we can really elevate the number of people, of kids who are walking and bicycling through a proactive and thoughtful plan. And it will affect not only the children, of course, but also their parents, because it'll make it so that, make it easier for the parents to be able to do that as well. And we're working towards building a culture of walking and biking and inviting new people into the habit. So, thank you for that, Scott. Thank you so much for being here today too. Because this is the perfect time to have this conversation. And I don't know if anyone from the school district is going to be participating in that MnDOT discussion of opportunity. I really would encourage you or somebody that works with you to join, because MnDOT they'll be discussing how people can apply to get this free money to set up their programs. There's also another opportunity that, I didn't talk about it today because, I thought, well, we're going to try to handle it within the scope of the plan. But they also have in that same location, and I don't know if you all have access to that email that I sent last week, but I can resend it. MnDOT is, I mentioned that I was on the statewide pool of consultants and, developed 100 plans over 6 years. They have, a new solicitation and a new group of consultants, and they're offering that same planning, that same free planning for districts. You have to apply and so on, but they had the information session for that today, and they have another one. I think it's again November 1st or 2nd. So, and that's basically free planning for the school district. You have to put a proposal or a grant application in, and it's very competitive because all of the school districts from throughout Minnesota, they know that MnDOT can only get about 10 districts or 10, every year. And sometimes they're like 3 school districts, sometimes they're 20 school districts, and in general, the consultant does about 30 total plans per solicitation round. But I think you guys could really benefit from that, and we could. I think the timeline will be a little different, but we could set up the plan to really work together with that. And already we have the right structure, with this kind of all ages and abilities and 6 E's. So I don't know if any thoughts or questions or comments about that set of ideas.
Scott, question for you. Is that something that you see yourself as kind of the champion within the school district, or is there somebody else we need to be engaging within the school?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be me, just based on my position and level with inside community ed and stuff. We do a health and safety. Don't quote me if they're a director or not, but my guess would be that person would be at least the starting point. And I'll try and look up the name here while we're chatting, and I'll drop it in the chat box. But yeah, we do have somebody that's in charge of health and safety. So I would assume that would kind of fall under their role if the district wanted to pursue that.
Yeah, because I think as a city, we're here to assist in any way we can, but I think when we're looking at this idea of programming, it's really going to take some champions within the school district to ultimately communicate and implement it.
Yeah.
Antonio, are you aware of any school districts in the area that are doing a really good job at this type of work?
Yes. And, not exactly in the area. So, I don't know how, for example, I'm doing some work in Glencoe, comprehensive plan in the city of Glencoe. Their safe routes to school plan is old and doesn't actually match where the schools are today, for example. And they haven't really implemented a lot. There are other schools though, like I've done some work in Fergus Falls as well. And they're really very proactive and are going after funding to implement. In the metro, both the city of St. Paul and Minneapolis, which are, the schools, don't have a lot of funds and resources, and they really depend on these grants to implement improvements, and they really have a solid program. And so, and they do the hand tallies, for the counts, and some schools in particular do a fantastic job. So it varies all across. And I think part of the challenge is that many school districts don't have awareness of kind of the potential for kind of also working with other initiatives that they may be interested in terms of safety, in terms of addressing parent drop-off and pickup, for kids, the chaos in the parking lots. I mean,
I think they probably just think that is what it is. That's just normal.
Yeah, exactly. That's how people see it. And oftentimes, and we ask people, who are especially some of the older administrators, it's like, how do you remember getting to school when you were in school? And people will say, oh, we used to walk or we used to bike. And it used to be that the majority of kids walked or biked to school. But, now
2 miles uphill both ways in the snow.
That's right. That's right. And, and now, as parents, the experience is, we just got to drive because everybody's in a hurry and it's unsafe. There's all these big, huge roads and people are driving crazy and there's no facilities. But there's a lot that you can do with programming to make the experience a lot safer. So if you have a neighborhood that's, somewhat near a school and you have crazy traffic, nobody's going to want to walk. So you got to do something to fix it. So what the two options are, you build a trail, with signals. That's fantastic. You can really make that's going to be a fantastic idea, but you're going to have to spend millions of dollars to make that happen. And you're going to have to wait for years. You're going to have to find funding for the design. You're going to have to find funding for the construction. You're going to have to wait and go back and forth. You can solve that problem in not even a tenth of the time just by putting crossing guards. And you put crossing guards, you pay, it's a fraction of the cost, but you can implement super quick. And then when MnDOT has a solicitation and says, we have infrastructure money available, which they right now do. I mean, they also have a no match infrastructure grant for greater Minnesota. I don't know that Chaska will qualify since you're in the Twin Cities region, but they have an infrastructure grant that requires no local fund, no local match. And they'll give it to the schools that have the crossing guards in place and that can say, because they do evaluation as well, as part of a safe routes to school plan, we've increased the number of children who are walking to school by using this crossing guard. And we, year after year, we do measurement twice a year, with the hand tallies. All of that process is very well defined. And then MnDOT, when they evaluate, they're going to say, hey, these guys really are committed and they know what needs to be done. And so we know that our new sidewalk that we built is going to be used. So yeah, it's a huge opportunity.
I think it'd be interesting to almost do a case study too for the kids that regularly walk and bike to school. Do they have better grades? I'm assuming they do.
The research is that they do, actually.
Yeah.
And the research is that they do. And that's one of the, that came out from a study that was accidentally came to that conclusion. And then it was replicated in other studies. They were looking at the effects of breakfast, at home. And I think it was done in one of the Nordic countries recently. I mean, maybe about 5 years ago or so. And they found, yes, that of course has an effect, but breakfast alone is not, it didn't make up, it didn't, they couldn't explain the cause for the improvement based on whether they had breakfast at home or not. And they, the researchers went back through the data and they're like, oh, it's actually the kids who are walking or biking to school who are doing better. And that was the greatest factor. And yeah, there's all kinds of statistics and research about how good it is. So yeah, so we can follow up, and through the work of this specific plan, the pedestrian and bicycle plan, there are some things that we can put in there, to kind of provide general guidance. A Safe Routes to School plan is also in a way kind of arduous because it takes there's a lot of interpersonal contact and a lot of meetings and kind of in a way convincing and commitment making to be able to get the year after year, all the campaigns, to set up the walking school buses, to do the measurement that happens simultaneously in all of the classrooms in a school, where there's maybe next meeting, I'll have a little bit more information that I can share with you about some of these programs, but there's all kinds of things that are part of that toolbox of Safe Routes to School planning. So, oh, and Scott just sent a chat there with Mike McLaughlin.
That's who I would reach out to start with. He may not be the end all be all, but he'll be the guy that at least can put the conversation in front of like maybe the leadership team or something like that, because he is charged with health and safety with inside facilities. So
okay, that's wonderful.
that includes indoors and outdoors. So I would feel like would be up his alley or within his scope. And
just so that we kind of have a plan of action here, who from our team can follow up with him? Because I mean, we probably want them to participate at this meeting tomorrow, or no.
I can reach out to him and just let him know.
Okay.
I would be a little shocked if he can attend the one tomorrow.
Okay.
Such short notice.
Yeah.
Well, remind me of the day. It's November 1st at 11.
Yeah, there's yeah, November 1st. Let me just I can just go back to the screen. Let me see. Ooh. One quick second, it should be coming up. Yes. I'll send this message out again so that we have it, with the link to all of this information. Any other thoughts or questions related to the Safe Routes planning?
Yeah, Scott, when you talk to Mike, you can just let him know too that I'm a reference if he wants to get a hold of me to understand a little bit more about the plan we're putting together and how we can assist as a city.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, Marshall, I might just put you on the email. That way,
yeah,
I'll kind of looped in.
That's
perfect.
Wonderful.
If he's got questions and go from there.
That's very good. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you, Marshall.
Yep.
All right, I'm looking at the clock. We have about 20 minutes left. I'm gonna, unless we wanna stay on this topic for now, and we can follow via email. I'll move us back to the presentation. Is that good? Well, to talk a little bit about, okay, I got the thumbs up there, so good. I'll move us to chat a little bit about the plan itself and some of the recommendations there. And I'm gonna skip ahead here. Ooh. Running. My computer is not exactly being responsive here. It just keeps jumping all over the place. Okay, I think I'm just gonna start and we'll go. Let's see. Okay, so to talk a little bit about some ideas related to plan development and review, I've sent you just one or two parts from the plan yet. We had a little bit of a delay, to be honest, with some. I had to shift some effort to the listening sessions and some of that work. So I didn't get out to you all of the components that we have, but I've been working as well on some of the recommendations and network. And so I want to share that with you, just some thoughts on how we're thinking about the network for the city and some of the links that we may wish to consider. So on your screen, you see a map of the city of Chaska with some of the roadways, bigger roadways in a darker, or I should say, shown more wide on the screen. City roads a little bit smaller. What I'm showing to you right now, these purple lines, are what are called the RBTN network, Regional Bicycle Transportation Network. This is something developed by the Metropolitan Council. I was actually part of the team that developed this. And what it is the Metropolitan Council's idea for priorities for regional bicycle links. And you see two types of lines. You see kind of thinner and darker purple lines. These are alignments where Met Council is saying, we recommend that we have a bicycle facility on this facility that is shown here, or alongside this facility. So, on 41, for example, they're saying, we recommend a facility along 41. You also see this wider kind of half-mile radius kind of blobs. And this is the Met Council saying, we recommend that an alignment or a facility be placed somewhere within this shaded area to connect the places that the shaded area is above or is on top of. And so these are kind of search corridors in a way for a facility that in the case here can go north and south along generally this direction. The other item that you see, and you might be wondering about this little red icon, these are what are called RBTN, Regional Bike Transportation Network destinations. So these are the destinations that the Met Council says these are regional destinations, and it would be important to make sure that we connect them as part of the regional bicycle network. So this is regional in scale. It's not necessarily what serves the need of Chaska specifically, but it serves the needs of Chaska to connect to the regional network. What I'm showing you now in green are the trails that exist currently. So this lets us see where there are gaps, for example, in facilities that, whether they align or not with the regional bicycle transportation network alignment. And so, we have, a portion of these alignments already filled in. We don't have a north and south, but we do have southwest to north east, for example, that's available. And you can see that, there are other connections that, are not entirely there. Of course, through the downtown, there's continuing work to think about how we handling that, for example. So now I'm zooming in a little bit, and you see the alignments, you see the corridors, and you see a lot of numbers. What those numbers are the daily volumes of traffic along those roadways. And the reason why this is important is because, as you know from personal experience and from your knowledge of riding bikes, etc., the more motor vehicles that are in a road, the kind of more difficult it is for people bicycling and walking to feel safe and to choose ride a bicycle or walk there. So these are, you know, the actual number of cars that are expected to go by in a day. When I'm showing you now a page from MnDOT's bicycle facility design manual, and this is how you select a bicycle facility according to MnDOT. In the type of land use context that we are thinking about when we are thinking about Chaska and the places we want to connect in Chaska, you see in that little box, it says, in these land use contexts, MnDOT's typical bicycle user is interested but concerned. And that's, you know, kind of a shorthand way for thinking about the different levels of tolerance to traffic stress that people have. And what it means is that, and you see interested but concerned right here. So that's that term that MnDOT used. And it ranges from people who are, you know, who will ride on the roadway with fast cars and share that road with cars, to people who, you know, I'll ride on a bicycle facility, but I don't like sharing space with cars. And so these are the kind of places where this interested but concerned population will ride. And you can see that LTS1 is actually the only place or the only level of traffic stress. LTS means level of traffic stress. That's the only type of facility that will accommodate the target population according to MnDOT. And what's an LTS1 facility? Well, it's a facility that is you know, comfortable, inviting. It doesn't expose the user to a lot of traffic stress. Now, this is what I'm showing you right now is a page from MnDOT's facility design manual, and this page actually, it comes directly over from Federal Highway Administration's bicycle design guidance as well. And what it tells us is, you see on the left side of the screen, average daily traffic, and you see it ranges from 0, 1K, 2K, all the way to 10K. That means from 0 vehicles per day to 10,000 vehicles per day. On the x-axis, you see speed, and this is the observed speed, ranging from 0 miles an hour, 20, 30, 35 to 55 miles an hour. And you see different colors on the screen. That tells us the different zones that, you know, combinations of speeds and volumes and the kind of facility that we might expect. So if I'm in a place where I have 6,500 motor vehicles per day, you see that horizontal orange line. And if the motor vehicles are traveling at, you know, we actually have measured and observed, they're traveling at about 32 or 33 miles an hour. So it's not the posted speed, but it's preferably the observed speed. Then the kind of facility, you know, the place where those lines intersect is a separated bicycle lane or a side path, for example. You can see that based on this information that I'm presenting to you, anytime you have more than 3,000 motor vehicles per day, you know, at 30 miles per hour or more, you need at least a bicycle lane in order to be able to use that or to invite people to use that. If you are above 6,500 motor vehicles per day, you need a separated facility, a side path or a trail in order to have that level or that standard for comfort and usability. So when we look, you know, at this map that has all of these numbers, and you see 10,000, 12,000, 3,300, you know, these different numbers everywhere, that is telling us that, you know, if we are over 3,000, we need a bike lane at the very minimum there. But if we are over 6,500, we need a trail there. And, you know, this is, again, if we want to have this all ages and abilities network, that is one of the goals of the plan. Just to, you know, review, this is a typical bicycle lane, you know, no separation from moving cars, right adjacent to them. This is a buffered bicycle lane, so it's a standard bicycle lane with a little bit of separation, usually about 2 feet or more. And that in itself actually makes a condition less stressful. This is a protected bicycle lane, which is basically a trail or trail-like level of comfort shared in that same roadway space. It's not separated from it by elevation or anything. It's at the same elevation, but it has this physical barrier providing protection. And in different surveys and people find this as comfortable as a trail generally. Now, of course, this is expensive or relatively expensive to do, but there are also ways to do it in a kind of more quick and inexpensive way, with this plastic bollards, these candlesticks, and providing a buffered bicycle lane. And this is the kind of the trail standard that you have a lot of in Chaska, and it's kind of the gold standard for what people might be looking for, a separated shared use path. Just some ideas about geometry. Generally 10-foot width is the minimum recommended. Well, it's the recommended width. You can go down to 8-foot width in a shared use path, but that would be the bare minimum that you will want to use. So 10-foot is the recommended width, 8 is the very minimum. Here, I am showing you a map again, and we're seeing the RBTN alignments in the purple. So it's the corridors with the wide purple kind of faded line, and then the more tight line is the alignments. And what I'm also showing you, you see in black, these little blobs, those are structures. Those are structures in the city of Edina. And it's not perfect coverage that we have for this data. You can see here in this southwest corner of the city where I'm running my cursor over, we have a roadway network, but we don't have the houses that actually have been developed there already. But in general, you can see how structures and population are distributed through the city. Something else that is an addition in this map, you also might be able to distinguish on your screen this set of squares, this grid that's superimposed on the map of Chaska. And what this grid is a half-mile grid, meaning that the lines are half a mile from each other. And why is that significant? Because one of the ways in which we are going to be recommending kind of a comfortable and accessible and useful bicycle network is to think about spacing facilities, approximately half a mile from each other in places where there is concentrations of population, so that people don't have to be traveling too far to get onto a facility and then be able to make the journey that they want to make or need to make for their daily needs. And so these are just components of the approach for the network we are recommending or we're developing right now. But I just wanted to share that with you as a kind of a set of considerations. And in addition to this half a mile grid, this is the facilities that exist today that have that level of traffic stress 1. And you can see that we do have some areas with pretty good coverage, some of these residential areas. And you can see that there's a bit of a grid there. There are opportunities to strengthen that as well. But there are other newer areas of the city where, for residential locations, that doesn't exist. And for sure, for commercial locations or for work locations, that also doesn't exist yet. And so we're working on making those recommendations. And of course, we'll be working with you on this over the next couple of months. What I have shown you in a lot of ways also implies some costs, some investments, some commitments. But so it's good to review again, that the goal is we want to increase the number of people walking or biking in the city. So it's going to take some effort to do that. Some of that is improving the infrastructure that we have, and some of it is adding. And that's in addition to the programs investments that we've been discussing. The goal, of course, to increase quality of life, amenities, and environment for everybody. And lastly, to also gain recognition as a community that values and prizes bicycling. What do you think about these ideas, these these items that I've shared with you? Do they make sense? Is it stuff you've thought about before? Do you think it'll be helpful for our next steps? Any comments? All right. Well, I'm not hearing any comments. So,
Liz, what do you think?
It's my turn to talk. It looks good. I think be helpful to kind of have this overlay for our community and developing where there's maybe needs that we haven't thought about before.
Mhm.
One thing I'd like to see more of is we have lots of trails that are, can you go stand over there for a second? We have lots of trails that are near the shopping areas, like let's say on Pioneer by Cub, Target, and they're those ones that are kind of, I don't know how you phrased it, but best in class, where it's kind of separated from the cars. But then there's no paths to get into some of those commercial areas and like right up into Target, right up to or some of the shops safely, or what I perceive to be more safe. I think I can see where this map would be helpful in identifying some of those areas like that.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. That's a very important observation. So if just to make sure that I understood correctly, we have great infrastructure kind of to the edge of these commercial areas, but to actually reach the front door of Cub, it's not so easy because there is not any actual friendly path there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that I think is missing currently, along with, bike racks, which would be hopefully rather inexpensive.
Thank you. That is a very helpful observation. And it's not uncommon in a lot of places that is an issue as well. Getting that last, it's not even like an eighth of a mile or a quarter mile, but it can be very difficult and intimidating and unsafe. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Anyone?
Well, I'll share that I got a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks with Carver County. They are updating their Southwest Regional Trail Master Plan. So I've lined up a meeting with them. They've been working with WSB, who's helping with our plan here, to update that master plan. And so they've lined up a meeting with some other city administration for us to review and provide feedback. Because then ultimately that'll come back through. We'll review it at the park board and ideally get a city council's a resolution of support for those updates. But I think that will accomplish some of those areas on your map, Antonio, where there's those wider swaths of search areas.
Yeah.
That were kind of in the southwest, going kind of northwest. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Good. That's good to hear there's progress on that front as well.
Mm-hmm.
let me, we're at 6:30. I just had, maybe let me just quickly review my notes for kind of the next items. I wanted to chat, well, just a little bit about the review process. And, you know, we haven't really had a lot of participation, even though, you know, I think we only sent like 1 or 2 chapters for review. Liz, I think you've been the only one that has participated. And
I only seen 1 chapter, Antonio.
okay, and you know, and you've been, go ahead.
Did I miss a chapter that went out?
No, you know, I think we've only sent one or two. I think we have some more that are going to be coming this week. I had intended to send more of those earlier, but you know, because of kind of having to shift a little bit to make sure that we had the listening sessions set up and all the materials needed for that. We've had a little bit of a delay, but we'll be taking that up again and sending those out. But what I was mentioning is that I think you've been the only person that has accessed the documents. And so I want to figure out how we, you know, what recommendations all of you may have for, you know, how do we, what might be an effective way to get more engagement from the steering committee members? Any suggestions would be helpful. And thank you, Liz, for reviewing that. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I think it's a great product so far. It's going to be a great document.
Thank you. I'm
So
excited and happy to hear that. Thank you very much.
Well, I know I was going to follow up, Antonio. You and I talked earlier, and I still need to do this, but I think it may help if I send out an email back out to the project steering committee and just really encourage and stress the importance to kind of get us across the finish line here for everyone on the steering committee to, you know, pay attention to these draft chapters coming out. And I think for members to feel comfortable that even if they haven't been able to participate on these Zooms, it's okay. And there's still the opportunity for them to be involved in this plan and review these chapters as they come out. Yeah. So that might help. I think sometimes people just feel like, oh, I haven't been as involved, and then they just start dropping off.
Yeah.
And so I can just try to positively encourage them to still participate.
Okay, that will be helpful. And you know, maybe sometime next week. I think I'm meeting with Mary next week, and then we have our PMT as well that Mary just set up again. But maybe you and I kind of chat next week and figure out, you know, next steps for that. And then also, of course, and I should mention this. Marshall was wonderfully able to chat with the county and talk about our timeline for the work. And we have, I think, a couple of months now till end of November, I believe, or maybe end of December. So that gives us a little bit of space as well. So that has been really helpful, and I appreciate that. So thank you. And I think, Pat, I think you were involved in that maybe. Thank you very much for that as well. So we'll be, you know, wrapping things up still and getting those products out. But if we can figure out how to re-engage the steering committee members, you know, we'll do that next week. We'll have those conversations on how to do that. And I think that we can have a wonderful finish, a strong finish, and the participation that we need to make sure the product is as good as it can be. So yeah, I noticed that we're 4 minutes over time. Any thoughts or questions before we adjourn? Thank you. All right, well, thank you all very much. Thanks for your time today for our conversation. And I appreciate it very much. Thank you for all your contributions.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you
Thanks,
next time.
Antonio.
Thank you all very much.
Good to see
Good evening.
everybody.
Yes, wonderful to see you all. Bye-bye.